I started to meditate when I was a medical student, and it helped me a lot to reduce the stress that I was having due to exams and normal academic life.
Well, I started when in my first year as an undergraduate, I was doing a history degree. And to be quite honest, I started because somebody stood me up. I was supposed to have a date, and this guy didn't show up. So I thought, I'm not going to sit in my room waiting. I'm going to go to that meditation class.
I actually don't know why I first started meditating. I was actually a young kid, and I remember going down to my parents' room. It was in the lower level of the house, and lying on their soft white down comforter. And I would just start breathing, and I would get into these progressively peaceful, restful states.
Aunque yo medito toda la vida, desde los 15, 16 años, porque me interesaban mucho las tradiciones orientales.
Well, I started meditating in some earnest in 1997 with a Zen group. And I joined that Zen group because I wanted an authentic practice, and I wanted to be closer to the sacred and to develop love and compassion.
I think I started at 2011, so this is late 2011, so this is going into my 10th year of meditation. And basically, I've done it, give or take, every day since.
Started meditation around 2005 or 2006. And part of the reason why I started meditating was actually it was introduced as part of a course that I took as an undergraduate student at the University of Wisconsin. So during my final year as an undergraduate student, I took a seminar course on stress and health.
So I started in college. I was 21, and I started in the way that I think a lot of people do, which is that one of my best friends committed suicide. And I was very distraught, and my parents didn't know what to do. And my dad sent me a book by Jack Kornfield, A Path with Heart. And that was my gateway drug. And I carried it around with me for a decade. And yeah, that's how I started.
I also am a meditator. So I've done 2 Vipassana meditation courses. And I try as much as I can to bring in my meditation practice to my everyday life.
Urban life. Fast-paced and demanding work culture. It's all about productivity, efficiency, and career success. Technological overload, financial pressures, fragmented communities, social isolation. Study pressures, family demands, traffic and noise are just a few of the many challenges that people face every day, and it has been that way in Western countries for many years. Often people seek ways to endure the burden of modern life, and meditation seems to be an attractive option nowadays. With strong roots in philosophy and religion, meditation does not have a clear beginning. Some experts talk about 1500 years before Christ, others 3000, even 5000 years ago. But it's clear that it originated in Asia, more precisely in India. The most representative ones, Buddhism and Hinduism, share common origins. They have similarities in beliefs and practices, particularly in their emphasis on meditation, mantra recitation and concentration. They also share concepts of karma, rebirth or reincarnation, and the pursuit of spiritual liberation from the cycle of rebirth. It was in Chicago in 1893, through the World Parliament of Religions, that, for the first time, the American public formally learned about Eastern religions. The Parliament was a gathering of practitioners of different faith traditions, and the goal was to bring together world religious leaders on common ground. Swami Vivekananda, a Hindu monk and philosopher, spoke extensively at the Parliament about religious tolerance and the spiritual benefits of yoga and meditation, explaining how they are common resources for all human beings, not just for Hindus. Later, meditators such as Krishnamurti and Yogananda, the forerunner of yoga in the West, left an important mark in the dissemination of a variety of meditative practices.
Hinduism teaches discipline and self-denial. These holy men practice discipline and self-denial. The Hindu believes that life on earth is temporary and is preceded and followed by an indefinite series of lives. Only full knowledge can bring release from this cycle of rebirth and lead to unending bliss. To achieve it, many Hindus believe that the body must be disciplined. Some use pain and self-torture for this purpose.
During the 50s and 60s, yoga had a strong impact on Western society, particularly because of its claimed physical benefits. The broad media coverage given to the Beatles and their mystical retreats in India in the 60s helped meditation to become popular in Western countries as an option to get a bit of inner peace. The Vietnam War was the social and political context then, and the hippie movement emerged as a countercultural response to the prevailing social norms and values. The movement emphasized peace, love, freedom, and communal living as a rejection of mainstream society's materialism, consumerism, and conformity. They embraced Eastern philosophies such as Buddhism and Hinduism, seeking spiritual enlightenment and personal growth and wisdom. The positive effects of meditation on physical and mental health, found by the scientific community at that time, sparked a massive movement of promoters and followers. In the late 70s, John Kabat-Zinn adapted and secularized Buddhist meditative practices and renamed them as mindfulness. In the last 20 years, the support of a new wave of celebrities and artists brought more media attention and public interest. Today, many meditation methods coexist, each seeking to achieve a specific mental or spiritual state. There are thousands of schools online, a huge range of apps for mobile phones, even peculiar meditation machines let you practice meditation easily, quickly, and automatically. Households, universities, jails, workplaces, even schools have been incorporating meditation techniques to improve the well-being of their members. Over the last 40 years, the practice of meditation and the business around meditation have been on the rise. In the United States alone, the practice of yoga and meditation has increased more than 300% in just 5 years.
Meditation. For meditations.
Meditation.
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 So sometimes I think you can be a bit surprised when you meditate because it can be really calm and very nice. And then sometimes when you meditate, it's not so easy.
I have had more unexpected or unwanted states from meditation than I could possibly count.
I myself have had experiences where, I've been meditating and become extremely distressed or despondent or depressed or incredibly anxious.
I wonder if you're doing meditation correctly, that everyone at some point will come to that negative side of the human psyche. Things like feelings of fear, shame, disgust, horror, sadness. And those, I would definitely have experienced those feelings and emotions in meditation.
Meditation has a lot of different effects, and some of them are positive, and some of them are consistently positive. And many people never have any problems, and it's really great, and it's life-changing for them, and that's wonderful. And that's just not the whole story.
Some researchers are starting to pick up on this. In 2017, a scientific journal published a survey of meditators about unwanted effects. Scientists have reported that 25% of meditators have had adverse or negative effects from practicing meditation. Dr. Garcia Campayo is a psychiatrist and a mindfulness teacher, and is one of the scientists who decided to investigate this area. Why did they decide to do the study despite the meditation hype?
Nosotros teníamos mucho interés en hacer un estudio sobre efectos adversos por, dar una visión más amplia de lo que es la meditación. No esta visión distorsionada, demasiado positivista, casi naif, ¿no? que se da de la meditación, ¿no? Y porque nuestra propia experiencia indica que efectivamente hay en nosotros y en la gente con la que trabajamos, ¿no?
In the same year, researcher and psychologist Dr. Willoughby Britton published the Varieties of Contemplative Experience study, which interviewed meditators who had experienced challenging effects. Among many other results, she found that 7% of the participants had felt disconnected from reality, and 82% had felt fear, anxiety, panic, or paranoia. The story behind her study, however, was different.
But if you want to go through the backstory, it really started with my dissertation study, which was about looking at the effects of meditation, particularly mindfulness meditation training, on sleep. We discovered the complete opposite of what we predicted, which was that the more people meditated, the worse their sleep got. Ooh, no, this is the wrong answer. And so I sat on the data for many years, not publishing it. A couple of years later, that I was on a meditation retreat, and I told the teacher, meditation was causing cortical arousal and insomnia in people. And the meditation teacher said, well, I don't know why you psychologists are trying to make meditation into a relaxation technique. Everyone knows if you meditate enough, you stop sleeping. What? What else do meditation teachers know that we should be asking them as researchers?
While researchers use different approaches, the consensus is that meditation may impact three aspects: physical, psychological, and social. Physical aspects may include symptoms such as pain and sleep changes. Psychological aspects may include anxiety and paranoia. Finally, social aspects may include social impairment. Different meditation types, settings, and durations may trigger different effects within these aspects. Let's look at physical aspects.
This terrible ice pick-like pain in the side of my jaw, or some terrible neck spasms that happened in my trapezius, rhomboid, and related muscle groups, as well as very strange lower back pains, odd abdominal pains, weird sensations in my heart that could feel like breaking open or feel like being stabbed occasionally without any obvious cause.
In 1979, meditation expert and former Buddhist monk Dr. Jack Cornfield conducted a survey to understand the pattern of experiences reported during retreats in students of Vipassana meditation. He found that 55% of students in the longest retreats have had at least one unusual physical experience, such as twitching, involuntary jerks, violent shaking, involuntary movements, and pains, among others.
And I think even just sitting down sometimes is the hard thing. You sit down and you're sort of go inside yourself, and then what you feel might be quite unpleasant, sort of like, just it's quite difficult. I sometimes say to students, it's like suddenly you look in the mirror and you're having a really terrible hair day.
Muy frecuente que aparezcan desde mareos a sensaciones de dolor de cabeza, a sensaciones quizás de palpitaciones, etcétera, etcétera. Sensaciones de somnolencia, sensaciones de dormir peor.
The first time it really hit me was during a retreat, but a shorter one, like a 4-day retreat or something. And we did a lot of meditation throughout the days. And maybe day 3 or so, I was taking a nap after lunch. And, I was I guess I was kind of relaxed, but a bit dizzy and tired. And then I just woke up, snapped like this. And just my heart was racing, and I just full blown. I'd never really had one, but it seemed like a panic attack from nothing.
Dr. Britton's study reported also pain, sleep changes, somatic energy, thermal changes, breathing changes, headaches, cardiac changes, fatigue, and dizziness, among others. What about the psychological effects?
Hello, and welcome to your loving kindness
Welcome to the
meditation
light
course.
exercise course.
In 2012, Dr. Julieta Galante ran a trial to see if an online meditation course focused on cultivating loving kindness would make people more altruistic. However, she found some unexpected effects.
What I found in my PhD was that although it helped, and many people found it very beneficial for their well-being, and also for, as I said, knowing themselves and reflecting on compassion. It was also very difficult for some people. They would start crying when they were in the first session.
The emotional effects that I had involved very high highs, which could be disorienting and sometimes could cause some social dysfunction as my energy level was out of sync with those around me, or my level of zealousness about meditation or the spiritual path was out of balance. Emotional lows that I would generally call things like the dark night or knowledges of suffering, which involve things like sensations of terror or paranoia, or profound senses of grief or anger or disgust, disenchantment with worldly things, sometimes profound senses of restlessness, irritation, and other strange, disconcerting sensations and emotions that are hard to classify.
Dr. Cornfield also reported that 47% of the students had dramatic mood swings, sadness, anger, boredom, restlessness, aversion and depression, among many others. Dr. Britton found that although 75% of participants had positive effects, 82% had feelings of fear, paranoia or panic. Some also had depression, dysphoria, crying, reliving traumatic moments of life, irritability, emptiness of emotions, or suicidal thoughts.
And when I tried to meditate, I would have really bad images. So I'd start feeling, I'd sort of remember things I'd read in the news about people who died in horrible ways. It was quite dramatic. And then I'd do everything I could to settle myself, calm myself, and then they would just keep coming. And what was really unsettling is the images would get worse and worse, like more and more. I'd just have a little memory of something small, but then the memories or the little bits of film or stories I'd heard about people who died would just flash into my mind. And sometimes images of knives and things. So really quite violent images inside my own mind for being thrown up by the meditation.
But it was in the summer of 2001, I actually became psychotic and manic on a retreat. And the first night, I only slept 3 hours and my mind was just fizzing. It was like a lemonade bottle that had shaken up. It was just terrible. And I knew something was wrong. And I went to the teacher. She just said, shrugged her shoulders and just said, "Oh, you don't need to sleep when you meditate." And so I continued with the retreat. And I was becoming increasingly psychotic and manic during that time.
In 2021, Dr. Britton studied mindfulness-based programs and found that 83% of the participants reported at least one adverse effect. Lasting bad effects occurred in 6% to 14% of the sample and were associated with signs of dysregulated arousal. But what does dysregulated arousal mean? The nervous system is a complex structure that transmits signals between different parts of the body. It is divided into the peripheral and the central nervous system. The peripheral system has two components. The somatic component, which is responsible for all the functions we are aware of, including the movement of our arms, legs, and other parts of our body, and the autonomic component, which regulates automatic functions such as heartbeats and quick responses to external events. While this response is vital for survival, problems can arise when it becomes chronically activated, leading to a dysregulated nervous system.
So on the hyperarousal symptoms, you tend to see anxiety, panic, agitation, emotional reactivity, and kind of an increase in every kind of emotion, irritability, crying, sometimes even mania or like euphoria, re-experiencing of traumatic memories, so flashbacks, insomnia, nightmares, headaches or body pain, perceptual hypersensitivity, which is, can start off really nice, can start off as colors get brighter and you can notice like the clock ticking across the room, and that's really cool until you come home from the retreat and you get into the city and you can hear every car door slam and every car honk, horn honk, and it can get very dysregulating very quickly. We also see on the hyperarousal side, you can see like involuntary movements, which can start off as, just facial twitches, but it can become full body convulsions. In more severe cases, we do see, signs of psychosis. So things like hallucinations, both auditory and visual hallucinations, delusions. Hyperarousal symptoms are things where there's something added, there's something extra. Right? So there's too much emotion. There's too much, energy in the body. Oh yeah, energy is another one, somatic energy. With dissociation or hypoarousal, often something that you used to have is taken away. Often people report not having any emotions. So having emotional numbing, not having negative emotions, but also not having positive emotions, not really feeling motivated to do anything.
What does science say about the challenging effects of meditation on social aspects?
Tendencia al aislamiento, un desear no estar con la gente, como un aburrirse con la gente, por ejemplo, que sería casi lo inesperado, lo contrario a lo que uno pensaría que tendría que ocurrir cuando medita, pero es relativamente frecuente. Mayor rigidez psicológica, es decir, uno quiere silencio, paz, tranquilidad en todo momento, y eso es una expectativa poco realista porque no se puede, ¿no?
Dr. Britton described that 50% of the participants found their social skills impaired, while 42% found their occupational skills impaired.
Being in the now, you can be in the now a little too much, and so that your sense of where am I going next, where is this conversation going, how did this conversation start? You know, important parts of the past and future can also disappear. And then, so that was dissociation. And then there's two that are kind of could go either way. So executive impairment. So things like having trouble concentrating, remembering things, making decisions. Those can be a sign of either hyperarousal or dissociation. And similarly, social impairment. People feel like when they have all these symptoms, they tend to withdraw because they're trying to manage them. They might not feel the regular sense of familiarity or affection towards other people, or they might be very irritable. And so they tend to withdraw from people because it's stressful to be around other people.
Could there be a pattern among people who suffer from these adverse effects, be they mild or more severe? Could it be factors such as personality or social environment that might influence the occurrence of these adverse effects?
I would say I haven't seen a pattern. I mean, you can say students are typically very underslept. So you get quite a lot of effects for students, which are to do with just feeling tremendously sleepy, going to sleep, or feeling uncomfortable because of sleep-related sensations. So that's a common, for example, pattern among students.
We identified 26 different influencing factors. So there's a lot going on in order to ask, like, what are the risk factors? But I think, this is very unlikely to happen to lazy people who meditate whenever they feel like it. It's more of the people who are, really... They set out, they have a goal, they set it out, they follow every rule to the letter. They do, they are really, really good rule followers.
Los novatos, cuando uno se autoexige demasiado y quiere hacer mucha práctica intensiva de meditación, sobre todo yendo a retiros. Ahí hay un alto riesgo de que la mente no está suficientemente preparada para ese, sobreesfuerzo, y entonces pueden aparecer cuadros de todo tipo, desde tristeza, cuadros de depresión, cuadros de aislamiento, cuadros de no querer estar con la gente, de falta de sentido de la vida, etc.
And meditation makes you face up to your dark demons, if you like. So if someone, for example, was adopted when they were young and they felt that was extremely traumatic and kind of never really resolved that, if they then go into meditation in their 20s, 30s, they'll probably be hit with a lot of abandonment issues and find that very difficult.
Personas que tienen alguna enfermedad tipo esquizofrenia, tipo trastorno bipolar, enfermedades, psicológicas graves, tienen mucha más facilidad de poder desarrollar cuadros graves de tipo de disociación, de tipo de sentirse fuera del mundo, de desrealización, como que el mundo no es real.
While Western researchers are revealing who is most susceptible, Eastern religions have mapped the adverse meditative experiences that their spiritual seekers go through over time. Because most Western contemplative practices have roots in Buddhism and Hinduism, several scholars are growing interested in their maps of meditation experiences.
If you look at this long enough and you start to study the old maps, you recognize that a lot of this falls into predictable patterns, that there are predictable ways that this unfolds. There are sequences when you're more likely to have physical pain or emotional pain or challenging spiritual highs or challenging spiritual weirds.
For some people, meditation is not about stress and well-being. That's the focus that I'm giving to it now, because that's my research. Meditation comes from traditions where it wasn't necessarily about well-being. It was much more about a spiritual aim, or even for many people, a discovery of the ultimate reality. It could be their minds, their personal reality, or even claims of being able to discover how the universe really is.
Mahasi Sayadaw was a Buddhist monk and meditation master known for popularizing vipassana, or insight meditation. He wrote a book called The Progress of Insight, where he revealed an ancient map. Is one of the best-known meditation experience maps in the West, due to its English translation in 1965. It details the different stages, insights and challenges that practitioners may encounter, offering practical advice and instructions to navigate through them. In order to reach nirvana or awakening, the student has to pass through different states. Feelings like dissolution, fear, misery, and disgust may be present during the practice of meditation, and even when not meditating. These may happen one after the other in a phenomenon informally called dark night. In this context, the purpose of the dark night is to provide meditators with a profound understanding of the nature of suffering and to break down deeply ingrained attachments and misconceptions about reality. However, the dark night experience is not a universally shared or necessary aspect of meditation progress. It is described within the framework of the Buddhist Vipassana tradition and may not be experienced in the same way within other Buddhist traditions.
Nosotros en el estudio miramos los diferentes tipos de meditación, aparte de las características, ¿no?, del tiempo que llevaban, de si esa meditación se hacía en un contexto religioso o en un contexto secular, ¿no? Y vimos que no había grandes diferencias.
Instead of thinking about, oh, it's transcendental meditation that's got the problem, or it's Vipassana meditation that's got the problem, or it's, you know, the way people are being delivered mindfulness in therapy that's the problem, it's a lot more universal than that. It's more about the person.
Sometimes people think, well, I'll go away on a retreat, in a silent retreat for 10 days. Sometimes the people who say that are the people who are doing very, very intense study. And I sort of sometimes suggest, well, you know, if you're really drawn to it, of course, try it. But just bear in mind you're doing very intense study, and what your mind might need is something a bit more relaxed when you meditate. So I think context is really important. And the funny thing is, and traditionally learning meditation, it was always done in the first step to meditation was looking at your context.
The question of whether or not these can be entirely avoided is not well answered. And what we really need is comparative research looking at the traditions, the techniques, the range of effects that happen from them to really determine to what degree these are avoidable and whether or not avoiding them is even entirely a good idea. There are whole traditions that claim that it's actually by going into some of these challenging experiences that we get the most benefit. And there are other traditions that say, no. Actually, there are ways to entirely avoid those. We can avoid the hindrances in meditation or the challenging experiences or whatever it is. And again, this divides whole traditions. And it's still an open question, and I think really requires better science to get a sense of what is actually going on.
For some people with really excellent self-insight and awareness, they may be able to avoid it. More likely, they may be able to sort of control it or sort of downplay the extremeness of it. But I think for most people, these things are probably unavoidable in the sense that it's probably going to come up for them in some way, shape, or form.
People who have negative effects don't mention it. And I think that, you know, why don't they mention it is a research question in itself.
When you're new to these retreats, the teachers carry enormous authority. You don't actually know quite what you're trying to achieve with this practice. And so you're rather in the dark. And so your only guide is the teacher.
And during retreats, it's sometimes easy to get a hold of a teacher to talk to, sometimes not. You know, it's usually like one teacher for a large group, and you know, you can't always, you know, go and you know, disturb the teacher.
Another thing that we're finding is that when people report that they have negative experiences, they are shamed and blamed and have negative social responses.
So I just continued and I didn't talk to anybody, and people picked up my behaviour as a little bit odd. I was eating very little at meals, just having water and bread, and we were communal meals, everybody could see, but nobody raised anything.
If you don't know what to do, or you don't know that these kinds of things will happen, and the sense of additionally on top of that, then, well, it must be me, I must be doing something wrong, it can really compound and feel terrible, and that you think, oh, I just have to, and meditation teachers will sometimes say, you just have to practice harder or more deeply commit yourself to the tradition, or, you know, You need to get rid of kind of the things that are getting in the way of your progress. If you're someone who's experiencing anxiety, depression, or suicidal thoughts, you're self-critical, you're self-judgmental, that just makes it harder.
There's kind of a bit of a stigma around saying that you felt strange things and you felt them while you were meditating or after meditating. And then even if they say it, they would struggle to find kind of the right support.
A lot of the victim blaming claims are actually not empirically supported.
In a lot of the retreats I've done, the teachers have actually never clearly talked about these things.
It is estimated that between 200 and 500 million people meditate around the world. This is a number that is close to the sum of the populations of the UK, France, Italy and Spain. Why is it that with such a large number of people meditating, only a small group of scientists and practitioners are talking about and researching the adverse effects of meditation?
For people who have an investment in meditation being a good thing, you are going to get a negative response.
In Western countries, meditation was first taught in teacher-led classes or retreats, or via books. With the progress of technology, new ways of teaching meditation were used to expand the potential of any meditation practice. Video cassettes and cassette tapes were great tools for that. With them, the more people were interested in practicing yoga or meditation, the more attractive a source of money they became.
Now, begin a slow exhalation through your nose and simultaneously contract your abdomen until the lungs are completely emptied. No air.
Computers on a mass scale, the internet and mobile phones have produced such a radical change that it has also affected the way people meditated in Western countries. Just in a few years, reality surpassed fiction. Then, the smartphone revolution came. The first meditation smartphone app came out in the market in 2010, becoming a global success very quickly.
Meditation apps are everywhere. Most of these apps that are out there are companies that are trying to make a profit. So by and large, the vast majority of meditation apps are for-profit companies. Now, of course, there are not-for-profit companies as well, and there are a number of those, and there are many that market themselves as not-for-profit companies, and that may kind of be true. There's a number of companies that I would think of as hybrid companies, where they provide a free product that's accessible to everyone, but then they sell something within their app. Because these companies, at the end of the day, their main interest is in getting new subscribers. They don't, if you're a company, retaining subscribers is not necessarily your biggest priority, particularly early on in the piece, right? You just want people to sign up for particularly a year-long license and to buy your product. And there are many things like whether or not, if the app is unsafe or even whether or not it works, that is not necessarily good for business, so to speak. It's not in your interest as a company to tell people, well, it only works sometimes, or it only works if you do it this way, or it only works particularly if you do it with group support. Much of the data sort of doesn't necessarily fit with the story of how apps actually teach people meditation. And that's not something that a lot of app companies want to put out there because it would undermine their product.
According to Statista in 2022, the worldwide revenue of the most popular meditation apps was $533.2 million. By only May of 2023, the revenue had grown to $11.8 million. By 2031, the revenue is expected to be $7.586 billion.
The complication, I think, with apps is that many of them are predicated on the idea that a tiny little bit of meditation on a very limited number of circumstances or opportunities can be massively beneficial. And there's absolutely no data to support that. So many companies will say, oh, all you need is to do this, 5 minutes a few times, and it'll transform your entire life. And we don't have any data to suggest that at all.
In the 60s and 70s, before the digital era, the business model used to be different. However, it was also profitable. Transcendental meditation and yoga were the most used meditation practices at that time. The huge economic success allowed transcendental meditation leaders to acquire at least 3 buildings: the Maharishi International University in Los Angeles, Maharishi European University, located in Switzerland, and Mentmore Towers in the United Kingdom. Despite its many benefits, some scientists analysed other aspects of its practice. In 1976, psychologist Arnold Lazarus published a paper in Psychological Reports. He reported that transcendental meditation could precipitate serious psychiatric problems. Such symptoms could include depression, agitation, and even schizophrenic decompensation. In 2009, a remarkable review from Washington University compiled the adverse effects reported in many meditation studies, showing that transcendental meditation, or TM, may produce some negative effects. Depersonalization, derealization, anxiety, mania, euphoria, dysphoria, depression, and psychosis-like behavior are just some of the negative effects found.
Individual researchers often, not only that other element of they may be wanting to promote a personal tradition or a personal belief, but it may just be that they're working with various organizations or individuals who stand to benefit indirectly from a particular message, right? So it may be that they run an organization that is focused on studying meditation. And if the results of a given study say, hey, meditation, maybe it isn't that great. Maybe people could just go for a jog, or maybe people could just do puzzles instead. Well, that kind of conclusion is not necessarily going to bring more money to their organization.
A lot more meditation research is needed, but we already know that it matters whether meditation is practiced as a spiritual quest or for mental health. This documentary is not intended to provide medical or spiritual advice. However, what follows is a general consensus on how to minimize some risks and make an adverse reaction more bearable.
If you would like to try something, start off with some 10-minute mindfulness a day, because that's a very light way to start engaging, and people will know very quickly whether they respond to it or not. I mean, someone that starts, to feel panicked as soon as they close their eyes and tries to do mindfulness, well then, don't do it, and you don't have to force yourself.
So if you are in the middle of a crisis, if you find that there's an overwhelming stress, you shouldn't actually start learning meditation at that point.
Conforme voy quitando el diálogo interno, lo que ocurre a veces a algunos meditadores que tenían este problema traumático previo es que empiezan a aparecer imágenes olvidadas, amnesiadas, porque ya no está el diálogo interno topando, ¿no? Y entonces aparece eso, insisto, no es que lo traiga mindfulness, simplemente te confronta con que ya existía, y a veces se requiere una terapia específica para resolver ese trauma y poder seguir meditando, pero si no, es como que topas con una roca que está continuamente saliendo.
To find other people who have had these, to find community.
Meditation-related adverse effects occur under optimal conditions without a history of trauma or psychiatric problems. It's not your fault and you didn't do anything wrong.
Perhaps there needs to be a raised awareness in the public that, meditation and mindfulness doesn't work for everyone. And it very much depends on where you are in your journey, where you are in your mental journey, your emotional journey, just to think about what's safe.
What about meditation teachers? What is good for them to know?
They seem to be quite defensive when they hear this sort of thing, as if you're trying to attack them. And you're not at all. You're just saying this is the reality of the situation. And if you're working in this field, you need to take note and you need to make provision and get people trained in mental health first aid and talk about it, training courses and all that kind of thing. And not to be frightened of it, but it does happen to people.
Where the people are dedicated to your well-being and to good outcomes and to listening to you and helping to figure out with you the best way for you to deal with what's going on and to be willing to change that up if it doesn't work.
But I always would say that when you're better, you can come back to the group. Because if you're excluded from the group, and it's a group you valued and really want to be part of, it's incredibly unhelpful. I mean, it makes the matter of being ill worse. It contributes to the illness, to be honest.
The problem that we're having now is we tend to assume that meditation is a linear path to well-being. So you meditate a little bit, you reduce your distress, you improve your well-being, you meditate more, you will have more of that, and you just continue improving the more you meditate. Perhaps it's not like that. Perhaps you meditate a little bit and that's good, but if you meditate too much, it may not be good, or it may not be good for you, it may be good for another person.
Nothing's perfect. Everything has some benefits and some side effects. Under certain conditions for certain people, like nothing is a panacea. This is not a critical, mean thing to say. This is just obvious common sense.
I think we need to do much more research on this, and I'm really interested in doing that as well. Particularly, I think that not just research saying, well, this can happen, but we need to know when, what's exactly triggering that and how to predict that and how to know who's going to get what, and even more importantly, where are we going? What's the ultimate aim of continuing the meditation?
In just a few decades, Western cultures have modified the original concepts behind meditation practice to be sold like any other product, generating millions of pounds for the few and much confusion for the many. A practice with religious origins dating back to at least 1,000 years before Christ deserves to be analysed more deeply. It's time to rethink meditation. Jane Reed, also known as Damcho Pamo, has taught yoga and Buddhist meditation for 20 years and has trained as a scientist and psychotherapist. She is the co-founder with Dr. Farias of Meditating in Safety, a website for raising awareness of mental health issues in relation to meditation practice.
Meditation, mindfulness are incredibly valuable to many, many people. And for myself now, even though I've had all these troubles, it's very valuable to me now.
Dr. Erik Jonhagen has just completed his medical training at the Karolinska Institute, Sweden, and is about to start his training as a consultant psychiatrist. For his medical degree dissertation, he studied intense experiences and risk of psychosis with mindfulness-based interventions at the University of Cambridge. He is also a former solicitor.
In terms of positive aspects, there are, a lot of them too.
Dr. Javier Garcia Campayo is Professor of Psychiatry and Chair of Contemplative Sciences at the University of Zaragoza, Spain, where he coordinates the Master of Mindfulness. As a psychiatrist and psychotherapist, he combines mindfulness meditation with traditional psychological therapies. He has published several books and scientific articles.
El tema espiritual se considera casi imprescindible en este momento para una sensación de felicidad, ¿no? Y esa conexión mindfulness nos la permite, ¿no?
Dr. Willoughby Britton is Associate Professor of Psychiatry and Human Behaviour at Brown University in the United States. She studies the range of effects of meditation and contemplative practices. As a clinical psychologist, she leads Cheetah House, an international community that focuses on recovery from and reduction of adversities from meditation practices.
To say that meditation is helpful for many things, anxiety, depression, stress, it is helpful for that. We have lots of data to support that idea. So that's not an assumption, and finding that there are negative effects doesn't take that away.
Dr. Jasmine Childs-Fegredo is Senior Lecturer at the University of York St John, United Kingdom. She has worked as a psychologist for the National Health Service with an interest in trauma-informed care. She studies contemporary psychological therapies such as dialectical behaviour therapy, yoga-integrated psychotherapy, and mindfulness.
I'm not saying do this mindfulness because it's good. I'm like, here's the list of mindfulness practices. Go and have a look. Research yourself what might work, what speaks to you, and then come back and let's talk about it.
Dr. Daniel Ingram is a retired emergency medicine physician with a Master in Public Health, a meditation teacher and a writer. He has co-founded the Emergent Phenomenology Research Consortium to connect researchers studying experiences emerging from contemplative practice and the Dharma Overground Forum with Vincent Horn to foster honest communication around these experiences. He is board chair and acting CEO of Emergence Benefactors, a charity supporting research into the various effects of meditative practices.
Some great experiences as well, and ultimately these have been some of the most transformative experiences of my whole life.
Dr. Elizabeth English has studied and practiced mindfulness meditation for over 4 decades, including the study of ancient meditation texts at Oxford University. She is certified in several mindful therapeutic approaches and has developed and taught an evidence-based mindfulness course to hundreds of Cambridge University students.
Just took me a couple of years to realise that what had been, this was really with hindsight, and it was wonderful learning, and it comes into my teaching of meditation now because all these things feed in.
Dr. Julieta Galante is Deputy Director of the Contemplative Studies Centre at the University of Melbourne, Australia, and Senior Visiting Fellow at the University of Cambridge, United Kingdom. She has trained as a public health doctor and mental health researcher. She studies the suitability, effectiveness and limitations of meditation techniques for mental health promotion.
When you go to meditation course, approach it with an open mind, but think that it will be a journey, a little journey of discovery into your own self and your own reality and perception.
Dr. Nicholas Van Dam is the inaugural director of the Contemplative Studies Centre and associate professor in the Melbourne School of Psychological Sciences at the University of Melbourne, Australia. One of his main interests is studying the complex ethical, social and systemic issues associated with the hype, hope and reality of meditation.
I think meditation can be an incredibly powerful and transformative practice for quite a lot of people. And I think it holds a lot of potential.